What does it mean to be strong? Is it the ability to endure storms, to rise when life has beaten you down, or is it something far more dangerous, something that strips away the very essence of what makes you human? Strength has always been worshipped, feared, and misunderstood. We chase it in our bodies, in our voices, in the way we carry ourselves through the world. Yet few ever stop to ask, what is the cost of becoming unbreakable? There is a point where strength no longer protects you. It isolates you. A place where the pain that once shaped you becomes the armor you can never remove. You begin to wonder, do you still feel, or have you simply learned to survive? You can spend your whole life trying to harden yourself, only to realize you've become untouchable in the worst way. Not because no one can hurt you, but because no one can truly reach you. This is the paradox of strength. You can become inhumanly strong, but you may no longer be human. And the question is, which path are you walking without even realizing it? Strength has been turned into a performance. From childhood, we are taught that to be strong is to hide the trembling hand, to bury the voice that cracks, to erase the tears before anyone sees them. We inherit the silent rules of a world that praises resilience while secretly fearing the vulnerability that makes resilience necessary. This is why so many grow into adulthood carrying an armor they never chose, one that looks impressive to others but feels suffocating from within. We are told strength means never bowing, never faltering, never showing weakness, as if humanity itself is a stain on the image of greatness. The more we try to live up to that image, the further we drift from who we truly are, until strength is no longer freedom, but a prison of appearances. In philosophy and in power, this idea repeats itself like an echo. Machiavelli once said it is safer to be feared than loved, and many take that advice to mean cruelty is the highest form of control. But what is overlooked is that fear has no roots. It is temporary, fragile, and demands constant maintenance. To live by fear is to live in defense, always sharpening your edges, always pushing people away before they get too close. When this mindset becomes personal, it turns inward, convincing you that to love yourself is weakness, to admit need is failure, and to hope is naive. It becomes easier to retreat into indifference than to risk the wounds of connection, easier to harden than to bend. And yet, in this self-imposed rigidity, we begin to lose the elasticity of life itself. Strength then becomes mistaken for numbness. The person who does not cry is labeled strong. The one who remains silent through pain is considered wise, and the one who denies attachment is praised as independent. But numbness is not wisdom. It is the absence of feeling. Silence is not always strength. It is often fear disguised as control. Independence, when it denies the need for others, becomes isolation masquerading as superiority. These illusions are seductive because they allow us to avoid the messy, unpredictable truth of human experience. They give us the illusion of mastery. But mastery built on avoidance is a house built on sand. When the storm comes, when life pierces through the cracks, the illusion collapses, and we are left with the emptiness we thought we had outrun. Consider the way people idolize coldness in leaders, celebrities, or even in their personal lives. The stoic, the unflinching, the untouchable. These figures are celebrated as though their lack of expression is proof of inner stability. But often, what we admire is not strength, but suppression. We forget that emotional maturity is not about erasing emotion, but about understanding and guiding it. A heart that refuses to feel may appear unshakable, but it is also incapable of empathy, connection, or genuine growth. True power lies in integrating both sides of the self, the vulnerable and the unyielding, because to amputate one is to cripple the whole. When society praises only the armor, we begin to confuse the mask with the person, forgetting that the mask has no life of its own. This confusion spreads into personal relationships too. How many friendships end because one person believed they had to be the strong one, never opening up, never letting the other see behind the curtain? How many loves collapse under the weight of unspoken fears, where vulnerability could have built bridges but pride built walls? People confuse protecting others with hiding from them, as if being human in front of someone else will undo their respect. In reality, it is often the opposite. The strength we try to hide is not found in our armor, but in our scars, our ability to reveal the wound and still walk forward. Yet the world tells us otherwise, so we silence ourselves and then wonder why we feel unseen. The conflict deepens when survival instincts are mistaken for ideals. To shut down after betrayal, to detach after heartbreak, to numb yourself after pain, these are natural defenses, necessary for healing in the short term. But when these defenses become permanent, they transform from healing tools into cages. What began as protection becomes a lifestyle, a creed, a false religion of hardness. And because society applauds this hardness, we are rarely challenged to question it. We are rewarded for suppressing softness, for turning away from compassion, for pretending that nothing touches us. Yet this applause is hollow, because it feeds the very emptiness that first demanded the mask. The longer we wear it, the more we risk becoming strangers to our own reflection. The tragedy is that many only realize the cost of this pursuit of strength when it is too late. They wake up years later and see that they have built walls so high even they cannot climb out. Their relationships have thinned, their joy has dulled, and their inner life feels muted. They may be respected, admired, even feared, but inside they feel little more than a faint echo of themselves. This is the hidden price of chasing an image of invulnerability. It grants you control in the eyes of others, but steals your connection to yourself. And if strength cannot bring you closer to your own humanity, then what is it truly worth? There are moments in life when you tell yourself that silence is the wiser choice, not because you have nothing to say, but because you fear the weight of being misunderstood. You sit in a room full of people and laugh at the right times, nod at the right stories, and carry yourself as if nothing inside you is stirring. Yet beneath the surface, emotions move like rivers pressing against their banks. You have been taught that strength is the art of concealment, that to expose the currents within you is to hand others a weapon. So you swallow your words, you hide your trembling hands, and you paint calmness across your face. Over time, this performance becomes so seamless that even you begin to believe it. But in the quiet of the night, when there are no eyes to impress, the mask slips, and you feel the loneliness of being unseen even in a crowd. Think of the nights you held back tears because you didn't want to look weak in front of someone who mattered. That moment when your chest ached with grief or betrayal, but you forced a smile because you thought strength meant control. You told yourself it didn't matter, that people could say what they wanted, that you were above it all. But the truth is, it did matter. Every word left a mark. Every silence you kept carved into you. Pretending not to care became your armor. Yet every time you denied your own heart, you chipped away at it. The applause you got for being tough was shallow compared to the exhaustion of carrying unspoken pain. That is the contradiction. Others may admire your resilience, but you are left living in the ruins of everything you refused to express. There are also those days when you notice how your relationships bend under the weight of your guardedness. Friends ask how you are, and you say, "I'm fine," even when you're not. A partner asks what's wrong, and you shake your head, fearing that the truth will push them away. In your mind, you believe you are sparing them, protecting them from the mess inside you. But what you are really doing is building a wall they cannot climb. The fortress you thought would protect your heart becomes the very reason no one can reach it. You feel frustrated when people drift away, but deep down, you know it is your silence that pushed them. You mistake distance for loyalty, but closeness requires vulnerability. Without it, love cannot breathe, and friendships slowly suffocate. Sometimes, you look back at moments of loss or failure, and remember how you chose pride over openness. You sat with your pain and convinced yourself that no one would understand, that no one could handle your truth. But what you really feared was being seen in your rawness, stripped of the strength you spent so long projecting. So you hardened yourself and told yourself you were unshakable. And yet, as the days passed, you felt smaller inside, not stronger. This realization hurts the most, that the very strategy you used to survive has now become the reason you feel lifeless. You survived, yes, but survival without expression is not the same as living. You wake up one day and realize you've been carrying scars you never allowed to heal because you never allowed anyone to see them. You may recall a time when someone did try to reach you, when they offered kindness, when they asked with genuine concern, "Are you okay?" And for a fleeting moment, you wanted to break open, to let it all pour out. But then you remembered the rules you set for yourself, the unspoken law that strength means never needing help. And so you smiled, deflected, and changed the subject. They left thinking you were fine, while you were left with the ache of your own silence. In that moment, the cost of your so-called strength became clear. You weren't just hiding from the world, you were hiding from yourself. The refusal to be vulnerable robbed you of the healing that honesty could have given. And little by little, you felt yourself disappear behind your mask. There are flashes of memory where you sense the mask cracking, when anger bursts out of you unexpectedly, when exhaustion makes you weep alone, when loneliness settles so heavily that you can't distract yourself from it. Those cracks are the proof that you are still human, still alive beneath the layers you've built. But instead of treating them as invitations to let others in, you patch them up quickly and tighten your armor. This cycle repeats. The mask slips, you repair it, you move on, until one day you realize you have no idea who you are without it. The mask has fused to your face, and the person you once were is only a faint echo behind it. And the tragedy is not just that you have hidden yourself from others, but that you have forgotten how to reveal yourself even to yourself. At some point, you may ask yourself, am I strong now, or am I just numb? The laughter you force, the silence you maintain, the hardness you display, do they make you resilient, or do they make you hollow? The people who admire your strength only see the performance, not the cost. And you wonder if you have traded real connection for a role you no longer know how to exit. You remember the child you once were, who spoke without fear, who cried without shame, who trusted freely. That child feels like a stranger now, and yet you long for their honesty. You long for a kind of strength that does not require the death of your own softness. But longing is not enough. You have to decide whether to remain inside your fortress, or finally open the gates. There comes a moment when you realize that strength was never meant to erase your humanity, but to reveal it. You begin to see that the scars you tried to hide are not blemishes, but living proof that you endured what once felt impossible. Every scar carries a story, every wound carries a memory, and within them lies the undeniable evidence that you survived. At first you resisted them, hoping to return to some imagined version of yourself untouched by pain. But over time, you understand that the scars are not reminders of weakness. They are the foundation of your resilience. They are not just marks on your body or mind. They are signatures of your becoming. They are the proof that life struck you and still you stood. And in that recognition, something awakens inside you, a strength that feels less like armor and more like truth. Silence, too, transforms in this awakening. Once, silence felt like loneliness, a punishment you endured when no one seemed to understand. Now, silence begins to feel like a sanctuary, a space where you can listen to your own voice without the noise of others drowning it out. In solitude, you discover that strength is not about how loudly you can shout into the world, but about how deeply you can listen to yourself. The stillness that once terrified you becomes the soil where your roots grow strong. You see that solitude is not emptiness, it is clarity. It strips away the illusions of approval and forces you to meet yourself honestly, and in that honesty, you discover a power far greater than any mask could offer. The courage to be with yourself, unarmed and unashamed. The imagery of light becomes real in these moments, not the kind of light that blinds or demands attention, but the quiet glow that rises after long nights of darkness. You recognize that your light does not shine because you were never broken, but because you were broken and chose to stand anyway. The cracks you once tried to seal shut are the very places where light escapes. The world told you to be flawless. It is your cracks, your imperfections, your jagged edges that allow you to radiate authenticity. Strength is not the absence of shadow, but the decision to carry both shadow and light with grace. You no longer fear the dark, because you know it gave birth to the very brightness within you. This awakening also reshapes how you see your fragility. Once you despised it, believing it betrayed you, believing it made you weak. Now you see fragility as the source of your deepest courage. To admit fear, to admit longing, to admit pain, this requires more strength than denial ever could. Fragility teaches you to be tender with yourself, to extend compassion to others. And in doing so, to extend compassion to others. It shows you that true power is not domination or indifference, but the ability to remain soft in a world that pressures you to harden. What you once thought would destroy you, your sensitivity, your emotions, your humanity, turns out to be the very thing that makes you indestructible. The more you embrace this truth, the more your definition of strength shifts. It is no longer about winning battles or proving others wrong. It is about carrying yourself with dignity even when no one is watching. It is about speaking the truth even when your voice trembles. It is about choosing kindness in the face of cruelty, forgiveness in the presence of betrayal. Hope when despair feels easier. Strength reveals itself in the quiet, consistent choices that align with your soul. It becomes less about being admired and more about being authentic. And though this kind of strength may not always be recognized by the world, it is the kind that brings peace when you are alone in the silence of your own heart. Awakening also means you stop measuring yourself by the eyes of others. Once, validation was your compass, guiding you to please, to perform, to seek approval. But now, you see the futility of chasing a moving target. Approval shifts with the winds of opinion, and no matter how strong you appear, someone will always demand more. In this awakening, you step away from the stage and stop performing. You learn to find worth not in applause, but in presence. You look into the mirror and see someone no longer defined by the world's shallow definitions of strength, but by the depth of their own integrity. You realize that the revolution you've been searching for was never about changing how others see you. It was about changing how you see yourself. And perhaps the most profound awakening of all is this: strength is not about being untouchable, but about being fully alive. It is about feeling deeply, loving fiercely, grieving honestly, and rising again without pretending you were never knocked down. It is about allowing life to shape you without letting it harden you. The world may still demand the mask, still applaud the performance, still equate indifference with power, but you no longer bow to that illusion. You carry your scars with pride, your solitude with reverence, your fragility with courage, and in doing so you discover a strength that does not isolate you from your humanity, but anchors you more deeply within it. In the end, you are left with a question that refuses to fade. What is the meaning of all this striving for strength, if it costs you the very essence of being alive? You have learned by now that strength without humanity is nothing more than a hollow statue, impressive to look at, unmovable in form, but lifeless within. The pursuit of invulnerability seduces many, but its cost is steep. Numbness, isolation, emptiness. When you finally stop running from yourself, you realize that the revolution you have been chasing outside, in recognition, in validation, in power, was always an illusion. The real revolution is quieter, deeper, more intimate. It begins in the silence of your own mind, when you choose to no longer betray yourself. This revolution does not announce itself with fanfare. It does not demand applause, nor does it promise the approval of others. Instead, it whispers in your chest, a calm reminder that true strength is measured not by how others see you, but by how honestly you can stand in front of your own reflection. The choice to remain human in a world that rewards performance is not an easy one, but it is the only choice that allows you to feel the fullness of life. You stop asking, do they think I'm strong, and begin asking, do I still feel alive? That subtle shift changes everything. The more you reflect, the more you see how outward validation has been the chain around your neck. Praise has never been freedom. It has been a leash disguised as a crown. Every time you tailored your strength to please others, you weakened your connection to yourself. Every time you hid your softness out of fear of judgment, you betrayed your own heart. In this awakening, you reclaim what was always yours: the right to define your own worth, the courage to stand unmasked, the freedom to live without needing constant affirmation. And suddenly you begin to understand that inner transformation is not just personal liberation, but the only kind of revolution that lasts. As this truth settles, you begin to see your scars differently. They no longer symbolize what broke you, but what rebuilt you. The solitude you once feared becomes a companion, reminding you that you are never truly alone when you are anchored in yourself. The silence you once avoided becomes a teacher, guiding you toward clarity and depth, and the fragility you once despised becomes your fiercest strength, because it proves you are alive, capable of feeling, and brave enough to remain open in a world that constantly tells you to close. Every piece of yourself you once tried to hide becomes the very proof that you are human. And it is in that humanity where the deepest power lies. The realization dawns that strength has never been about erasing your humanity, but embracing it so fully that nothing external can strip it away. You can walk into the world unarmed, not because you are defenseless, but because you no longer fear being seen. You carry yourself differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. You no longer crave respect born of fear, because you have found respect rooted in truth. That kind of strength does not shout, it radiates. It does not demand, it attracts. It does not isolate, it connects. And for the first time you feel the freedom of a strength that makes you more human, not less. This kind of power cannot be bought, borrowed, or stolen. It is forged only in the silence of inner battles that no one else sees. It grows in the moments you choose honesty over appearance, love over fear, compassion over hardness. It deepens in the way you carry your scars without shame, in the way you let solitude teach you rather than consume you, in the way you decide that your humanity is not a weakness to escape, but a miracle to honor. The world may still misunderstand you, may still demand you play a role, but you no longer need to answer. You have found something far greater than their applause: peace. And so, the final call is not loud, not dramatic, but silent and soulful. It is the quiet courage to remain yourself in a world that dares you to be anything else. It is the strength to stand in your humanity when everything around you pressures you to abandon it. The true revolution is not to become inhumanly strong, but to be human enough to endure, to feel, to love, to rise again and again. The transformation that matters most is not outward validation, but inner clarity. And in the stillness of this realization you finally understand, the greatest act of power is not to be feared, nor to be untouchable, but to remain profoundly, unapologetically human.